with Grotrian and with Steinberg. They also bought Wilhelm Steinberg. If it had not been for that, we would no longer see these iconic names.
Mm-hmm.
Because business is challenging, and if you don't have deep pockets, and if you're not prepared for the negotiations of it all,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to be left behind.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's what
Yeah.
we're seeing globally. I mean, it's happening all over the world. It's not happening just in the US. We have a very small idea of what's going on. I talked with a manufacturer from Germany just this week, and he was explaining to me his challenges with, how familiar does this sound? Transportation issues, supply issues, getting the products that he needs. Of course, there's been major corporate changes with Steinway buying Kluge and Steinway buying Renner. They're obviously, as anybody would do, are taking care of themselves first. And so the supply chain is all affected across the board in manufacturing. And
Mm-hmm.
you may know I'm partners in a distribution company who distributes
Oh yeah,
pianos.
that's right.
And so we see it all. We see it more as a global thing than just what's happening inside our country. So it's
Mm-hmm.
been an interesting time.
Yeah, I bet.
Lots of fun
Yeah,
on lots of levels.
yeah, I got to see, I mean, yeah, it's very interesting to see how things are moving, with China and the companies that are coming out of there. It's pseudo related. I visited Hong Kong back in 2016, not mainland China, but I got to see a bit of kind of the way that the piano industry was there, and try to talk with Stefan a little bit about that. But it is interesting. It does feel a lot more centralized. The market of piano technicians, for example, I found it was very hard for the independent piano technician to sort of make their way.
Mhm.
Those that could were sort of
In China,
relying. What's that?
in China,
In Hong Kong. So
in
again, this
Hong
is
Kong.
not China, but I
Right,
feel it's felt like culturally there was a connection there.
right,
Um, yeah, the independent piano technicians, there was maybe a little bit more emphasis on age, right? Maybe to the negligence of experience and ability, at least within the individual piano technicians market. And then within there was still a piano maintenance and tuning market, but it was very much attached to like major, probably I think it was actually Parsons or like major piano brands. So anyway, it was just interesting. So I don't know if you see any of
Well,
that or if.
the other thing that I think is really important for us to kind of wrap our brains around, we all have this idea that Yamaha was going to go into Berzendorfer, or that Parsons was going to go into Grotrian and
Mhm.
turn them into a Chinese manufacturing facility,
Right.
uh, or Yamaha into a Japanese manufacturing facility in Germany. And I think what we've seen, even from Zeiler and some of the others, it's really had the opposite effect.
Hmm.
They're not sending people from Germany to China to find out how to build pianos. They're sending people from China
China
to
to
Germany to
Germany.
find out how to build pianos.
Right.
And so there's been sort of that um, I don't know what the right word
Misconception.
is. Misconception is a good word. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I'm actually quite excited about the direction of the piano industry myself. But
Yeah.
yeah.
I wanted to ask you because you did mention, you don't do digital pianos and you are really focusing on these higher end brands. That's different than other piano stores. A lot of them will maybe have a direct relationship with Yamaha as like a main line, and then they'll, have all the digital pianos on the floor and a few other brands and stuff.
For less expensive pianos, Ethan, I have Baldwin, which is made by Parsons, and I have Rittmuller, which is made by Pearl River. So I
Hmm.
do have something that the average person can walk in the door and buy, and I do
Hmm.
have a small selection of used pianos. But
Okay.
my target market is sort of kind of in a completely different direction.
Hmm.
And if I'm not going to argue over $1,000 piano. If you want to buy it somewhere else, that's fine.
Right.
And I don't, because I don't take any of this personal. You either buy
Hmm.
or you don't buy, and
Hmm.
that's based on what you think is better. So,
Hmm. Hmm.
and it
Yeah,
also cuts out some competition too. You understand? I've got a
totally.
great Schimmel dealer in the area. Colton. He's just down in San Jose. I have Steinway just across just across the bay here. I have Fazioli over in Oakland with Piedmont Piano. Callahan is a great competitor, and my opinion is you either buy or you don't buy, and
Hmm.
if you don't, that's good. If you need me, call me, and I
Hmm.
try to take that pressure off of not just the consumer, but I take it off myself. I don't go home crying because somebody bought a piano from Mr. Callahan or
Right.
whatever.
Right. Yeah, that sounds like a great approach. And we often have come across that theme too, as it applies to piano technicians too. Like each of us has our niche, you know.
Right.
Some people like the way that I tune the piano. Maybe I have a little more stretch, or I put a little more time into voicing, or I don't know. And maybe it's just the relationships that I'll hang out for a little bit and have a tea with you or something, right? And so this idea that, we can't all be in the market, right? And even benefit from the fact that there's variety there. That's something that
Well,
recurs in this piano technician community, I think.
I'll say this. Um, the one thing that I do know is I'm not a technician. That's the important thing. Linda Kay, who I'm sure you know,
Yeah,
she
she's here
is,
often. I don't know if she's here today, but
yeah,
she's often here.
she's the VP of the technicians guild here, and she hears me say to people all the time, my biggest strength is I know most of my weaknesses, and one of those is I am not a technician. I don't even play one on television. It's I But the most important part of my business is the technician because the pianos come in and all the pianos sound okay when they come in the door. Uh, but when you take it to that next level is where the magic happens. And without the technicians understanding what they're doing, I would be in a world of hurt. I would never be able to. I could never sell $100,000 Steingraber if it was poorly prepared.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Do you find like a certain amount of time? I mean, you don't have to cover specifically budget, but do you see a pattern, or is it very specific to the piano, like how much needs to go into it in order to make it take that extra step to make it appealing to the customer?
I've got last um, 3 weeks ago, I got two Wilhelm Steinbergs, a Model 125 and a Model 130. And outside of it needing to be tuned and a little tiny bit of regulation, I had to do nothing to them. Last week, I got a Model 130 and 138 Steingraber, and those two were air freighted. uh, they came in and literally Linda was like, they may be 5 cents off. I mean, they're just that close. And there was no regulation involved with either of those two pianos. So, when you're dealing I think when you're dealing in a category like that, you, at least I can only speak from my experience. Uh, there's very little prep work that goes into most of the German stuff I get. Estonia, maybe voicing, a little bit of voicing and some regulation, and that's about it. Grotrian, almost exactly the same thing. I sold this past year a 190 and a 165, and for both of those models, we literally tuned them and they were ready. So I can't hear you. You're on mute.
Sorry, I muted myself, I guess. Oh, look who just jumped on, Linda Kay. That's funny.
Now, what was that planned?
It could be. I didn't get the live stream out on Facebook for a couple minutes after we started, so maybe
Don't
she
tell her
saw
anything
something,
I said about her,
heard her
please.
name. That's awesome. Linda, I don't know if you can hear us yet. Did you join? Where are you? Oh, she's still connecting to audio, and she can't hear us yet. Um, Anyways, we'll say hi to her when she jumps on. But you know, the general theme of what I heard you say is that there's it's varying degrees, but then there also is a pattern with some of these specific brands where actually you don't need that much. But at least having that attention to those instruments, the capacity to have it is very important. Like if you didn't have it, you'd kind of be lost without the technician there to kind of do the final tweaks.
Absolutely. And I'm telling you, Ethan, listen, I'm being quite honest with you. I know the relationship between dealers and technicians can be dicey at times.
Hmm.
Sometimes the technicians don't like the dealers, or the dealers don't like the technicians.
Hmm.
But you guys are the heart and soul of our industry. And if there's any people out there who are dealing with dealers right now that they're having issues, please don't hesitate to call me. I can some of the things are explainable. Some of them are just personality conflicts, but without a qualified technician who understands what they're doing, I wouldn't have been in business past the pandemic. I would have never made it. But when people
Hmm.
come in the door, we tell them, if we need to customize a piano for you, we're happy to do that. Linda will come in and spend some time and get the exact idea of what the customer is looking for. And maybe it's a regulation, maybe it's an easing of the keys, maybe it's tuning, maybe it's voicing, maybe it's any numbers of things. But spending the time and not just blowing it off, spending the time to get those pianos correct by somebody who knows exactly what they're doing is what
Hmm.
makes the difference in our business.
Hmm. Yeah, it's the wow factor, maybe, right? They
Oh,
always say like,
absolutely.
yeah, yeah,
Absolutely.
that makes a lot of sense. Um, I'll check here. I also just want to see if, hey, Linda, we're saying hi. It looked like you were connecting to audio for a second, but I don't know if you're aware, and that's why you joined. But Rick was just mentioning you, so you're welcome to jump in and say hi as well at some point. But I'll go back to some of my questions. You know, you talked about some of the sales that happened. I'm curious, and I don't know how many of the audiences, but this is my general curiosity. Like, just kind of like the relationships that you build with the clients, right? And also like the sales cycle that happens when it comes to pianos. Like, is it just people come in, they sit down, they play a few, they go, I want that one, or is it like, does it take months? Is it a variety? Is there a specific personality that you feel like you have to understand in order to sell pianos at a certain level? Like, what are your thoughts about that?
Okay, I can give you some examples that were rather challenging. Um, so, I had one lady, for example, who came in, and what we do is as a normal, well, not normal course, but fairly normal course. When the customer comes in, I mean, if they want to go look at pianos immediately, that's fine. But I want to know some things about that customer before we sit down, like what level of player are you? What type of music do you play? What kind of furniture do you want in your home? What kind of budget are you working with? I want to know some of those things because honestly, why would I want to show them a 1955 used Gold Branson upright if what they're here to buy is a Steingraber?
Hmm.
And that doesn't make any sense. So I try to get that stuff. But back to the lady, she came in and she was a challenge. And so in part of my process, I sat down and we got coffee and we sat and talked, and I learned a lot about what she wanted. And we walked through the store. She spent hours with me. She spent hours with Linda, and she bought a piano. Who knows what she bought? I don't even know that she bought anything. Uh, but the amount of angst and pain she put both of us through was incredible. On the other side of the coin, we have a tire shop directly across the street and about a half a block down. One day during the pandemic, Linda was here tuning, and I said, I'm going to come in. I came in a pair of jeans and a t-shirt and noticed a customer at the door looking in through the windows. And I just got up, and we were all scared to death of everything that moved at the time. So I just put on my multiple mask and walked to the door and asked him what he was looking for, and he said, just a gift for my wife. And I said, well, okay. So he came in, we walked through the store, and his initial thing was, I want to spend no more than $5,000, and I don't want anything but a Yamaha. And I said, okay, well, I have both of those. So I took him to what he asked for. We walked through, and we walked around where the Steingravers were. And if you're paying attention, there's sort of a little bit of a wow factor when you walk into the area that the pianos start at 125,000 and just kind of slowly move up from there.
Hmm.
And we had a piano back there that was $60,000. It was an upright. And he said, "Would you play that for me and let me just hear the difference?" And so I played it for him. He pulled out his Black American Express card and he was out of the store in 15 minutes.
Wow.
So the process kind of varies from person to person. It just
Got it.
depends.
Got it. Oh, yeah, it's fascinating. Yeah. So really, it sounds like a lot of it comes down to reading the person and making sure, you know, at least in his case, there was something about the relationship where even though he gave something specific, you left it open enough, right? That he was open to leading himself in a different direction. You have to be kind
Yeah,
of
yeah,
sensitive to the
yeah, you could say that.
personality.
You could say that.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Um, so I'm also just curious. So you run the Arcasman independently now. You purchased it,
Right.
um, and previous to that, you worked with Hollywood Piano, right? Right before
Yes.
that,
Yes, I was their general overseer.
and had you run your own piano business previously? Like
I
been
was
the
in San Diego for about 4 years
okay,
with
so you
Mountain
had
Story.
run an independent business before.
And before that, I was with Baldwin. I worked for
Okay,
Baldwin Manufacturing when it was located in the US. Yeah, I
okay,
was the regional
okay,
manager for the bottom half of the US from like 2002 to 2007.
okay. So how much of this move into Arcasman was, hey, I want to own my own store. Let's see what's out there, and you found Arcasman, and how much of it was, oh, Arcasman is looking to move on and sell, and oh, here's an opportunity, let me take it. How much of that was driven by, your desires or what was available and seemed like a good fit?
I have to think about that one.
Oh, really?
Uh,
Interesting.
well, I had no intentions of owning my own store again. I was
Right.
doing fine at Hollywood. I liked Hollywood. I enjoyed the atmosphere, but because of my position, I worked directly for the owner of the company,
Hmm.
Glenn Tribitz,
Hmm.
and my job was to be sure nothing ever went wrong.
Hmm.
And uh, we have, I don't think I'm telling too much information, but we would rent, we have, we had out at the time around 450 rental pianos in long-term rentals. And then we would rent anywhere from 75 to 100 different movie studios and television sets and concerts and things like that per month. And then we had the 4 stores and we had the 2 websites and the 12 outside promotions. And those all come with salesmen uh, that can all be challenging at times. And after 8 years, I said, I think I've done enough. I'm ready to see what happens next. And then this opportunity with Russell came up, and I said, well, maybe it's time. So that's kind of
Got
how
it.
it played out. It wasn't a dream of mine. It was just one of those
It's just
things.
a natural, things came together. It was about time.
It
And it
was. It
sounds
was.
like this particular is more it's not to say that there's not a lot it involves, but a little bit more bite-sized,
Manageable.
right? As
Yes.
opposed to like a lot of things
Yes.
going on.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh,
Yes.
well, well, again, we're very happy to see that you've survived this long through the pandemic
Me
and
too.
all
And the
those
bank is
challenges.
too.
Awesome. Well, I think we, I like to think about the future of the piano industry quite a bit, and we like to talk about that here. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on like, I guess the biggest theme that I think of is how we all, right, as a community of piano industry people, the technicians, the owners and the dealers and the salespeople, what can we do together to make the future of the piano industry bright, you may not have any thoughts on that, but I'm curious. Yeah.
I think without our help, the future of the piano business is bright. I
Okay.
think it's, I mean, personally, that's the way I see it. Um, but if we join as a group uh, and work together rather than splintered apart and work based off of factual information and not stories that have been told or pre-programmed ideas, I think we're all in a much better situation in bridging some gaps that may be there because of misinformation or politics and I don't mean politics as in Democrat Republican, but politics as in the things that go on in the music industry.
Mm.
Um, yeah, I think there's a lot there. And Ethan, we talked a brief
Yeah, yeah,
moment
you have a
before.
client you need to attend to
I
for a
have
minute?
somebody, so I'm going to mute you for a couple of minutes and I'll
Yeah,
be
there's no
back.
problem.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you
that
so
sounds
much.
good.
I apologize. Please, I'm so sorry. This is so rude, but I need to take care of one thing. I'll be right back.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, just for everybody's information, Rick, before we started, he said, "Hey, I might have a client that said they could only come in at this time, and I might have to jet for a second." Um, so we'll allow him to take a little break, but he'll be back in a minute or two. And if not, we can continue either way. So yeah, I think that's interesting. I'm curious to ask him also a little bit more detail of kind of the direction that he was saying. Like first of all, how he's optimistic about things in general, no matter what we do, but then also like how to center in on, I think what he described as kind of focusing on the facts in terms of the information we focus on. So hopefully we'll pick that up there a little bit. I'll mention to you guys, well, first of all, I don't know if anybody's curious to give some input. I really enjoyed this session with Jonathan Cleghorn, and it sounded like a lot of other people did. I was thinking about maybe having him back in the future, but I was trying to think, what is there a format for that would be ideal? Well, first of all, are people interested in having Jonathan come talk further about, that piano and that experience? And if the answer is yes, what would be a good format? I mean, I have some extra photos. They're not all of his of the intricacies of his piano work because I was only there for a couple of days, but I could give you guys a little bit more um, to process about what was going on there, and he could go back in a little bit more detail around the things that he talked about. Um, or, we could move on to other topics. So I don't know if anybody has any input. You can certainly put something in the chat or you can unmute yourself. But I was considering having him back. And your preference could also be like, yeah, yeah, we got enough of Jonathan Cleghorn's story. um, Bill,
I
did you unmute yourself?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
did. For the most part, I what I saw and heard was enough for me. But I was interested in knowing more about the soundboard and whether and what crown it had. I thought that the piano had it wasn't a very good recording quality, but it seemed to have a pretty big sound. And he, aside from filling those cracks, he didn't talk about crown or anything. And so it's a 150-year-old board, and I was so surprised that it sounded the way it did, if very little had been done to it, and nothing was said about that. So I was just curious about, well, was there more to the story on the board than we heard, or was it just an amazing piece of wood 150 years later? It still works.
Yeah, that is a really good question. And I agree. He played the quality of the recording that he played was, it's probably just a phone or video camera or something. So the actual recording quality wasn't that great. But even that, you listen to the piano and you think, okay, that piano was unplayable. We saw he had limited resources and had to, sort of use some substitutions for various tactics and techniques. And yeah, I would say I was also relatively impressed with the sound that was able to be achieved from that piano. So I would be curious about that particular question. That's good. But yeah, maybe we won't need to dive into it too deep. Maybe we can do a quick follow up, or maybe we can just send a note or something like that. Any other opinions? I know Jim Kelly, you were kind of involved in that. You're welcome to unmute yourself, or it looks like maybe you're typing. I don't know. Jim's always got his awesome hat on. All right. So while we're working on that info, yeah, Donna, what do you got?
Well, I was curious afterward um, about his comments about the hide glue. He didn't use it because it was in a big block. And I kept thinking about Bill Garlick talking about a piano that he had come to, that he heated the glue and it came back. And I'm just curious what the shop owner had told him and why he opted out of that for white glue. Because I just have a thing against white glue that's really strong.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I think he even showed, I don't know if, did he show up? I think he showed a picture of what the hide glue looked like. It did. It looked like kind of like a very impenetrable block that might require some sort of special tooling to sort of break it up. But I guess, yeah, my question was, okay, well, if that's how you process that type of hide glue, even though he didn't have the tool, what about the guy that had the hide glue? He probably had some kind of tool to pulverize it appropriately and use it. Yeah. So I was
And
curious why he didn't have that take on that resource.
and why wouldn't just a heat gun help melt it uh, to break down?
Yeah, that could be as well. That's a good question. Or even just like put the whole lump. Maybe it's a little unruly putting the whole lump into like a pot of boiling water or something. I guess typically though, no, you just heat it, right? There's no water involved. But yeah, maybe you just put the whole lump into like a container that's submerged in boiling water and let some of it melt off and then pull it out and then move on from there or something like that. Seems
I think
achievable.
the important thing is never to boil your glue itself, because that will
Mm,
destroy it.
Yeah, that's useful info. Um, yeah, so other things that are going on right now. I will be back here in Miami. I'll show you out my view out the window here. Yeah, and maybe it's viewable. It's like I have a nice warm scene. It's a nice escape from Chicago. Um, Unfortunately, I'll have to go back to that Chicago cold this evening. But yeah, I had this idea a little bit late. Maybe about a week ago, I called the local Steinway dealer and I just said, "Hey, I'm coming to town. Maybe you know of somebody there that would like to have a chat." I always find it interesting to see what's going on in different markets and just take the opportunity when I'm in a specific area to explore what's going on. So I know I alluded to it earlier, but does anybody have any connections in this area in Miami or Florida with pianos, or got any interesting suggestions for when I come back on what we could take advantage of me traveling into a different area? Um, Again, if you don't have any ideas, then that's totally fine. But it's interesting to hear what you guys have to say. And let me go back here to the comments. Looks like uh, let's read through these comments too here, and maybe looks like there's a question for Rick. Maybe we can get to it, but I didn't notice some things were coming in, so let's read through those. So Bill asks, said some things. Rick, I saw you were associated with Baldwin in the '70s. My piano teacher referred to Baldwin's as having a delivery truck bass. Please describe old U.S. Baldwin's characteristics compared with other pianos of the day. That is interesting. And then Susan Klein, finding all this very interesting. Great. Yes, please, more Cleghorn. Yeah, Susan, if you have any particular input, Susan, what you'd like to hear from Jonathan, that would be useful. Because then I could structure an episode around it. There's certainly one thing I'd love to bring back in. I haven't had a lot of time to do the background research, but I think it would be fun to be able to show you guys the actual records that I came across around these the pianos that I came across in Peru, specifically. I can't think of the designer of it. It's the inventor of the repetition lever, basically, was the name of the piano design. But I had found these record books, right? And I think even maybe it was Jim Kelly or somebody in the group when we were talking about Jonathan's piano, was talking about how they had access to original record books of, who owned the piano, or who sold the piano, stuff like that. I'd love to share a little bit about that maybe in a future session, and maybe that could overlap with some of what we talked about with Jonathan. Let me see here in the chat. Some more. Nancy said, also remember Bill Garlick talking about scraping off old hide glue and rehydrating it for restorations. Yeah, hide glue, I've also heard can be very useful in those respects. That's kind of one of the magics of it, is it can be sort of reused. Jim Kelly sent a direct message. Try Phil Bondi in Bonita Springs. He will have contacts. Okay, that's good. I appreciate that, Jim. Would be interesting to talk to who is tuning cruise ships. That is also very interesting. Good direction. I'll give that a shot. Susan Klein said, I don't like how hide glue rots in the pot. I'm thinking that Luthier's fish glue may be less annoying, no heat pot, etc. Yeah, I haven't experimented much with fish glue, although it seems like we've centered around hide glue quite a bit as a good resource. It does certainly smell kind of funny, but I don't know that fish glue is going to smell any better. Diane Hofstadter said, I think Donna Bird has considerable experience working in Cuba. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, Donna, you didn't say anything about what's going on here in Florida, but maybe there's certainly a lot of Cuban culture here. Maybe we can make a connection. And Jim said he knows about the logs and has tried fish glue, not bad. The logs, you're talking about the logs of hide glue, Jim? Oh yeah, your mic doesn't work. I see. Say something? Yeah, for some reason your audio doesn't come through. It's too bad. Dorothy said, I wonder what Heather Fandrick is doing with the Fandrick action. I actually don't know of Heather Fandrick.
Thank you.
Dorothy, Rick, welcome back. We'll
Thank
start
you.
chatting again in a
My
second.
apologies, guys. I'm so sorry.
That's no problem. We had some fun talking and making plans and stuff. Dorothy, who's Heather Fondrick? Are you able to unmute yourself?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah. Who is that?
Daryl and Dell Fandrick?
Yeah, and I'm always like confused about.
Oh, say it again. You faded out. Are you there? Hello, Ethan? Is anybody there?
I'm here.
Okay.
His headphones kind of malfunctioned earlier.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
All right.
Hey,
My mic
Okay.
mic went dead there for a second. But
do you want me to explain, or do you want to start talking to Rick?
I'll just say what I was saying when I got cut off, and then yes, I would like you to explain. Yes, there's like a handful of Fondricks in the piano industry, and I always get confused about how exactly they're related. So that's all I have to say. I'm mostly associated with Dell, and so that's basically what I focused on. But yeah, tell me who Heather is.
Well, so they were brothers, Daryl and Dell, and Daryl died. We talked about that a while back. And we were talking about the Fandrick action that he designed. Well, so Heather and her son are taking over the business, and I'm wondering what they're doing.
Oh, okay. Okay, great. Yeah, that is something very interesting to explore, especially because I haven't. Do you have a good guest?
Yes.
Cool. Do you have a connection, like that?
Yeah,
that you could reach out and make a contact?
Yeah, how does that go? How do we go about that?
You can you can send a joint. I'll put my email address in the chat here, ethankeyboards@gmail.com. You could send a joint email and just say, oh, hey, Heather, I wanted to introduce you to Ethan. He'd love to have you on the Piano Tech Radio Hours program. and then I could take it from there. As long as she's interested, we can continue the conversation. That sounds awesome.
Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right, let's turn it back to Rick there. We were talking about we talked a little bit about the future of the piano industry. One, you said you think it's bright no matter what we do, which is exciting. Um, and I'm assuming a lot of that maybe speaks for itself, but I don't know. Do you have any more details on that? Like what you find sort of exciting about the future of the piano industry?
Well,
And
I'll start out by saying that, you know, our manufacturers, our better manufacturers and our worst manufacturers, both are continuing to work on technology that may be
Mhm.
good for us in the future. And when I say technology, I don't mean online stuff. I mean the
Right.
uses of different woods, the uses of different hammer types, the
Mhm.
difference of you know, what would happen to the piano if it was this type of a soundboard rather than that type of a soundboard. I'm not sure everything that we do is good, but doing nothing is wrong. And
Right.
so, you know, over the past 300 years, we've changed so much and yet so very little at the same time. And
Mhm.
so I think that one of the things that's going to catapult us into the future is continuing to work on those technologies that maybe will make things just a little bit better.
Right. Yeah. And that makes me think of some of the chats that we've had with Steingraber, right? And that's one of the things I love about the Steingraber brand is that they both reach back into this like long history of pianos and they do these really interesting things. Like we learned about I think it was like they like corrugated aluminum for the lid or something. Like uh why not, right? And they said that they even did experiments and said, hey, there's no reason why these things have to be so heavy, right? And
There you go.
yeah, perfect.
I mean,
Um,
you know, is it right? Is it wrong? I don't really know whether it's right or wrong. I just know that it's, you know, it's for right now, it's okay. Maybe in 20 years, we'll go, oh my God, that was a horrible idea. I mean, who knew Teflon wasn't going to work, right? It
mhm,
made sense at the time. But,
mhm.
you know, as we move, you know, if we continue to do the same thing the same way, we'll continue to get the same results that we've been getting. And the
Mhm.
technicians that I talk to, the technicians that I hear from, the technicians that Linda tell me about, the things that Linda does even, she's not afraid to experiment on a new idea or a new thought or a new process just because it's always been done that way.
Mhm.
And that means no disrespect to anybody. Jonas Chickering was one of the wildest, craziest inventors of all times.
Mhm.
And going back to the early days of Zauder and Steingraber, I mean, for us to just sit back and hope and pray that it continues to work good is a mistake. But to
Yeah.
continuously look at new technology and new things that we can do. I mean, so you know, when somebody says we don't build them like they used to, I always say, thank God. You
Right.
know, I mean, and that again, no disrespect intended to anything. I love the old pianos, but there's also that idea that we have to continuously look at what's available now. That's just my
Mhm.
opinion. I
Yeah,
hope
no, no,
everybody
that
didn't hate me out there for that now.
I doubt that'll happen. Um, but yeah, no, no, I see where I appreciate the sort of specification of what you find exciting, and yeah, and I didn't necessarily know that that's the direction you were thinking of, so I appreciate the elucidation, and it makes me think of, we just mentioned Dalfondrick, and that's something I've always appreciated speaking with him is when he thinks about pianos, he from my perspective, he's always thinking about them from like a first principles level. So he said, okay, what's the goal here, right? Whereas a lot of the in any field, but especially I think pianos with their beautiful history and classical music and all this, there's this sort of like let's do it this way because it's been done this way. Um, Whereas he'll have these interesting thought experiments of well, like what kind of sound are we going for here? And that was really cool how he came up with, um, these really interesting ways to refurbish old pianos with epoxy, with their soundboards, right? And he talks about, crown, it's really about the rigidity of the soundboard, and it's not necessarily about the way it's shaped, and these are all really, this piano that I've seen a few times that he uses an example of this restoration with epoxy to a soundboard. It sounds beautiful, right? And it's things like that that I think that are aligned with what you're saying. We can do things differently and in a way that makes all our lives easier and makes the music more beautiful and makes it easier to make beautiful music, right?
Nobody loves Erard and Stryker and Pleyel pianos more than I do from the early 1800s. I mean, I love Paul McNulty for that very reason, because but at the same time, would those guys have built the piano differently in the 1700s if they had the same technology and research available to them that we have today? Maybe they would have.
Right. Yeah, and I forget which conversation we've had Paul McNulty on one of our conventions, and also I think on Radio Hour, and we've had someone from the Siegel Music Museum, Tom, who runs that, talk
Right.
about historical pianos. And what's really fascinating to hear, I forget which one of them, maybe both of them, talked about how a lot of these things we take for granted in pianos right now that traditionally we want to keep, and they're so connected to the piano. The time that somebody made it, everybody's like, what are you doing? No way, I'm not going to use that. Why did you even try that, right?
And sometimes pianos were made the way they were made because that's all that was available to them at the time.
Right.
And they didn't, you work with what you got.
Right. And I think you're answering a little bit of the second question I had from what you talked about the future of the piano industry, about focusing a little bit more on, facts and things than rumors. So specifically, were you referring to this a little bit about, how we can approach the future of the piano instrument itself a little bit more sort of data driven and just making things better? I'm sure there's a piece of that there. Is there anything else though? Like, do you feel like there's rumors of piano industry not going in a good direction or something?
Oh yeah,
Was there
I
any
know
more
there are.
specificity you have there?
Yeah, I mean, I know that there's rumors that the piano industry is not doing well, and that's just simply not true. And so, we sometimes want to. How do I want to say this? Let me think carefully about how I say this. Sometimes technicians are driven. That's still not the right way to say that. Sometimes we're driven by our own self-interest and getting to the facts of the matter. Do we build any bad pianos today? I mean, it depends on how you look at that. You can't just quantify it by saying that, this brand or that brand is a bad piano, because that's not necessarily true when you put all of the facts together of what that question means to the different people. Do you have $10,000 to spend? Well, then it's not a bad piano if that's all you can buy. Do you have $100,000 to spend? Now your spectrum gets a little bit wider, and now you have to decide what works for you. I think choosing a piano is like choosing a mate for life. If you're not happy on the first date, don't go on the second date. Just move on. There you go.
Okay. Yeah,
I think I said that right.
That makes sense. Yeah. Yeah, and I also think that's interesting what you raised about, when there's shifts in the market and different brands are acquired by other brands, and the positive side of it, allowing for us to maintain the integrity of whatever goodness that we have of existing brands. Like you said, when it comes down to like Grotrain or something like that, just allowing, that was similar to the way Stefan explained it, I believe, as well. It was like, it's just difficult when you have a piano, a brand that's that focused on something very specific, a very specific type of piano, to have the type of flexibility with capital in order to keep that business going through good times and in bad. And then, but if you could pair it with a brand where they can say, hey, oh, here's Rough Spot. Let's give you a little bit more capital, get you through this time. Then we can still maintain the integrity of what they do and allow them to do it well, right?
Right, right.
Very cool.
I didn't check. Did anybody have a question they wanted to ask?
Oh, there was one, and maybe we can grab it and then hop off here. Maybe one that stood out to me is a specific question. Bill Magnuson said he saw you were associated with Baldwin. In the 70s, his piano teacher referred to Baldwin's as having a delivery truck bass. He asked if you could describe old U.S. Baldwin's characteristics compared with other pianos of the day. Do you have an answer for that?
I think I would say that the characteristics of Baldwin today are pretty darn close to the way they used to be. And that delivery truck bass is absolutely true. I mean, the SD10 and the SF10, oh my God, what a bass they have. But we're going back to what we were talking about earlier. I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing. If you like big bass, then it's a great thing. If you don't like big bass, then it's not a great thing. So, yeah, I mean, they still have a lot of the same characteristics of the old Baldwin, but some of the scale design has been changed.
Cool. Good answer. Relatively brief. I have one more comment here now. It's a big one from Johan, so I'll read through it. A small amount of urea, I don't know how much, apparently prevents rotting mold of hide glue. Oh yeah, we were talking about hide glue earlier. Keep the glue covered in a small glass jar with a cover with a hole in it for the applicator brush when using it to prevent molds from the air from settling in. Also, urea added can keep hide glue in liquid form for cold glue applications and carry it around. A white water-soluble powder should be available from any pharmacy. All right, cool. Thanks for that tip. If that's useful to you, hopefully you can grab that text and make use of it.
Can I say one last thing, Ethan?
Yeah, of course. And we can run over for a minute or two, but I just
Okay.
want to be respectful of time. Yeah.
I'll reiterate what I've said a couple of times already. I think every technician out there, for what you do to make our jobs easier on the front line of trying to sell pianos, and sometimes trying to make a really bad piano sound good, or I should say bad piano, I should say bad sounding piano, sound really good and play really well. And my hat's off to you guys. And I really appreciate your work, and thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks for that. We all need you like sort of patting us on the back all the time. It can really be a real help. So it's appreciated, I think, to have you here saying that, and thank you for taking the time to share it. Awesome. Bill Monroe, wait a second. Bill Monroe was sharing something. Is that true? Did you want to show something, Bill? Oh, hide glue. What do you got?
Yeah, sorry, just an interjection on storing hide glue. I just keep it in a bottle. So I mix up a small batch. This is effectively my double boiler. So instead of putting glue in a pot, I put it in a bottle. The bottle goes in a jar of water, which goes in a glue pot. And that way everything is self-contained. I use it just like I use Titebond or any other glue. Put it back in the fridge when I'm done. It lasts forever. You don't have any growth, anything like that. So, and you can make small batches and it's very easily workable and such.
Okay, very cool. Thanks for
Cool.
sharing that, Bill. And by the way, Bill did share, I think you shared that in one of your recent lectures too. So
Yeah.
if you haven't subscribed for that content, you can also get great information like that from Bill from our various master classes. Okay, folks. Well, I want to be respectful of everyone's time. So we'll say a thank you to thank you again to Rick for joining us. Rick, you and I will also be in touch about other things in the near future. And we'll see you again next week for Piano Tech Radio Hour.
you.
Thanks for joining
Thank
us,
you.
guys. Talk to you later.